When CIA agent Nick Fury goes missing amidst the chaos of Vietnam, it will be up to Frank Castle to get him back. Though they never did say in what condition. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Get Fury issue number 1, a brand new miniseries courtesy of Garth Ennis. So then, as the book opens up, we are reintroduced to Le Trong Giap, a recurring character in what I guess we can call Garth Ennis' own personal Vietnam saga. The Cliff Notes version is that he was an on-again, off-again foe of Nick Fury who begrudgingly earned his respect by the time their fighting was over. He also appeared in that Punisher book, The Platoon. We see that the former general is being interviewed by some unseen third party. Giap says that despite his long life of military service, fighting the Chinese, the Japanese, the French, and the American, just to name a few, by the time his career was over, he was left feeling kind of empty and unfulfilled. However, though, even at this old age, with his body failing him and one foot in the grave, something still does manage to fill his heart with joy, and that is any stories he can manage to scare up about what he considers to be the two greatest soldiers that his era ever produced. Of course, he is talking about Nick Fury as well as Frank Castle, the man who would be the Punisher. It's after that we end up flashing back to Vietnam circa 1971. As we are reintroduced to Frank Castle, he is once again re-upped for another tour of duty, much to the chagrin of his poor long-suffering wife. Hell, by the time the military police guys end up pulling up, Frank is reading a letter from his wife while openly displaying a skull that has very clearly had all the skin napalmed off it. Oh yes, this is a very mature reader type of story, everyone, filled with a lot of blood, gore, and swearing. And really, from an Ennis book, would you expect anything different? The MPs are here right now because they believe one of Frank's guys is harboring a dog. That's bad because the local brass has been complaining about an outbreak of rabies in the area. Of course, one of the men under Captain Castle is indeed harboring a dog, and he basically dares the MPs to come after him, saying that this is the only thing he loves in this country and the only thing that loves him back. This actually ends up being the straw that breaks the camel's back, as it seems that Frank and his recon unit aren't actually very much loved by the other soldiers in the company. Oh sure, they go on the most dangerous missions and get the best, most actionable intel on the Viet Cong because they really are that good, but how many regular everyday people are lost because they're forced to either follow Frank and his people or to try and get him out of a hot zone? Furthermore, Frank and his guys, when they're back at base camp, basically live by their own rules. This is an argument that will need to be tabled though, because at that very moment Frank ends up getting a special call by the general, as it seems he's already been tasked with a brand new secret mission. It's from there we end up transitioning on over to see what's going on with Nick Fury. He's not in Vietnam at all anymore, he's actually in Laos, where him and his team have seemingly been captured by the local Khmer Rouge before eventually being sold back to the NVA, who hope to death march him and the few surviving members of his team all the way back to Hanoi. Now, with that revelation in hand, you probably think you know where the story is going to go next. The general is going to ask Frank Castle to lead a special rescue mission on Fury, right? Only, no, that's not the case. You see, they summoned Frank today for two reasons. One, because they know Frank has a pre-existing relationship with Fury, the two of them having previously teamed up to try and assassinate General Giap, but also because they know Frank Castle is the sort of thorough, cold-blooded soldier who would have no problem completing the actual mission they're sending him on, and that is to assassinate Nick Fury. Why? Well, because they fear he knows too much and that they wouldn't be able to properly send in a full team to rescue him and evac him all at the same time. Oh sure, the general admits that Nick Fury may be the finest spy that America has ever produced, but they still feel that he's a man and that the enemy has ways of making him talk, and if he does talk, not only will all of the CIA's deep dark secrets regarding Vietnam be revealed, but also all their deep dark secrets regarding all the surrounding nations. I'm talking that real messed up Henry Kissinger shit. The stuff that when it is ultimately declassified will end up being a major black eye on American foreign policy for, well, basically generations to come. They can't let that happen. And because they know Frank Castle is a legendary shot, they're going to send him on a special off-the-books mission to make sure that this loose end is tied up with extreme prejudice. Now, back over with Fury himself, well, he remains strong and resolute in his situation. Unfortunately, the men in his charge aren't doing nearly as well. One begins to drop due to exhaustion, and instead of wasting a bullet, the Viet Cong very grimly decide to just bury this poor man alive. This ends up causing one of the other soldiers soldiers to absolutely crack under the pressure and call the NVA. Every horrible slur in the book, Nick Fury does everything in his power to try and get this guy to keep his composure, but in the end it's not enough, and he ends up getting very brutally macheted to death as the comic comes to a close. And so that was Get Fury issue number 1, everybody, and if you've enjoyed one of Garth Ennis's many Vietnam-era Marvel stories before, I think you're going to enjoy this one because it's basically more of the same, and if you didn't enjoy them, well, then this one might not be for you, because like I said, it's more of the same. Hell, I personally enjoy the book more than anything on a conceptual level because this is basically a continuation of everything that Ennis was doing in his Max run, and now that he's told so many of these Vietnam flashback stories, with so many of the same characters like General C.I.A, and so many of the same locations like the Valley Forge, I almost want to sit down and make a real deal timeline of all of these events. I'm sure Ennis has one in his own head about how all of these things fit together. This is also a pretty interesting framing device too, because the General is basically telling this story about two men he really respected from the war, but we're not actually seeing it from their point of view, we're hearing it from his. And I wonder if there's going to be a big reveal later on as to who exactly he's telling this story to, or even at what point in the future he's telling the story. Overall though, I can't help but shake the feeling that this is going to end up being one of those stories that probably reads a lot better in trade. This first issue is really a lot of setup, a lot of, making the moods suitably grim and oppressive as most Vietnam stories are. Ultimately, I would give this one a 7 out of 10. Ennis is one of those writers whose name has such major cachet in the comic book world that I'll definitely always come back and at least check out the first issue of any new project he's doing, and he certainly still has a lot of love and affection for war history, and especially Vietnam-era war history. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.